I think I can make it now. The pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be bright, 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 sunshiny day.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Annette with What's on Your Plate. And I hope you're having a great morning and hope everything is well with you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me say again, this is Annette with What's on Your Plate. And this morning, we're going to do things a little bit differently. On the way into the studio, I was listening on the radio about the coronavirus and how it's affected everybody in the world. And one of the things that has happened was that in Italy, they are in virtually complete lockdown at the moment, and it's been very difficult for people to get around and do all sorts of things. But one of the things that has emerged from it is that there was a young lady who has been at home, and she's a musician and has been singing. And what has happened is that the neighbors around her and the people around her heard her singing and found that this is absolutely wonderful. This is entertaining. And what has happened on top of that was that they actually, she started singing and her neighbors joined in with her. And so what's been happening is that they've been actually playing music, they've been actually singing, they've been singing songs together, and it's actually helped each other and it's brought each other together. So there's this lovely communal singing which is going on. And it just got me thinking this morning that here in Scotland, we're actually based in Scotland, what song would we all like to sing together, you know, kind of thing. And I mean, there's things like Flower of Scotland, you know, kind of thing. There's, you know, the Proclaimers one, We Walk South 500 miles, you know, kind of thing. What would you actually like to sing or can sing together in a group, which will all bring us all together? So if you want to send me some information or even your choice of music, you can actually do that by actually emailing me at info@HeartSongLive.co.uk, just to get you started this morning. But let me just get back to the music and get back to what's on your plate. As I said, I've got in the studio here with me, I've got a lovely gentleman by the name of Shaun Keoli. Have I pronounced your name right?
Yeah, that's it. That's absolutely right.
Now, I've known Shaun for quite a few years now, and I'm actually quite surprised, but Shaun is actually in my church. I'm pleased to say that Shaun's actually one of the leaders and the elders in our church, and we've actually known each other for quite a while now. But I said to Shaun, I wanted more men to come on my show, and this is a series of interviews I'm doing with men. So I thought, shall I ask Shaun, you know, kind of thing. I've known him for a while, and I thought I'd take that leap of faith, and he said yes. Okay, I'll do it.
Here I am.
Yes. Now, this has actually been in the making for quite a while, because it's been something fizzing over. Because one of the things I was thinking about was, what is it men tend to, women are from, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and we do things slightly differently. But I wanted to dig down deep into what's going on, in a man's mind, as a Christian, and how it affects him on a day-to-day basis. But as a result of that, what we've actually done is that we've actually, as I said, we're going to do things differently today, and we've got more of a selection of what Shaun's choice of music and what Shaun's about. So before I'm just about to hand over to Shaun and ask Shaun, tell us a little bit about your background, just to let people know who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in South Africa many moons ago, and I lived out there. I came to faith fairly early on in my life. My folks, they found Jesus, which for my dad was something completely off his radar. So I was brought up from quite a young age in a Christian household, but then I moved over to the UK. Actually came here on holiday, but I ended up staying with, my dad is British. So I wound up by staying, but actually, to be fair, my whole, if I think back to my childhood, I really have one focus in terms of music. And it's a song we're going to play in a minute. It's a story of the thief on the cross. Yeah. And it's just how it's from his perspective and how he sees Christ, and he's just like, wow, I'm just blown away. And it's actually a song I've passed down to my children as well, and they love it.
Okay, so let's, as I said, we're going to be doing things slightly differently. Less of the talk and more of the music. Let the music talk for itself. So the first one that we've chosen is called Graphic. Why have you chosen that one, Shaun?
Yeah, so Too Small a Price is a song by Don Francisco, and basically it is just understanding how valuable Christ is.
Okay, let's go straight into it. As I said, we've got lots to cover this morning.
Turn the key and push the door. Get out here, he shouted, but I stayed there on the floor, frozen in the terror that rose and filled my brain, for I knew what they intended. I could not face the pain. Then soldiers came into the cell and they dragged me to the yard. They threw me down before a cross, brought the whip down hard. Carry it, they shouted, as I struggled to my feet. I put my shoulder under it and dragged it to the street. I stumbled through a wall of screams as they drove me through the gate. It seemed that thousands lined the streets, their voices filled with hate, like a wolf pack in the night that moves in for the kill. They closed the gap and followed us as we started up the hill. And it seemed I'd barely reached the top when they grabbed me from behind. They threw the cross down under me and tied the ropes that bind the arms close to the beams as they nailed the feet and hands, and they raised the cross up in the air and dropped it in its stand. Through a blur of pain, I saw the cross there next to mine. There were people all around it, so I looked to read the sign. It was nailed there up above his head, so the world could see the news that the man who seemed so helpless there was the King of all the Jews. And the crowd that stood around his cross made jokes about his name. They shouted, laughed, and spat on him, so I joined in the game. I said, hey, if you're the king, why don't you get us down from here? But the taunt just sounded hollow. It echoed in my ears. 'Cause he looked at me with eyes that seemed to reach into my heart. They shone a light on all my lies and tore my life apart. There was more that lay behind that gaze than simply blood and clay. But knowing was too much for me. I had to look away. But I chanced another look at him while he was looking down, where the soldiers who just crucified us drank there on the ground. And although he spoke them quietly, somehow his words came through. He said, "Father, please forgive them. They don't know what they do." And then, as if they'd heard him speaking, the crowd began to roar, whipped to frenzy by the priests who urged them on to more. But the worse the accusations now, the plainer I could see the guilt, the accusers, not the one there next to me. But the man upon the other cross began to curse and swear, and his voice was filled with venom as he hurled it through the air. All the horror that was in him and had laid his life to waste came out in every syllable he flung in Jesus' face, and Jesus only looked at him. But something rose inside of me in spite of all that watched us there. It couldn't be denied, because his righteousness and innocence were shining bright and strong. I just couldn't keep my silence. If that cursing still went on, I cried out, "Don't you fear the wrath of God? Even at the end, you'll curse us both into the pit. Is that what you intend? We're only getting what we're due. We've sinned our whole lives long. But don't you talk to him that way, 'cause he's done nothing wrong."
Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Annette with What's on Your Plate. I hope you enjoyed that. That was, what was it again? Shaun?
That's too small a price.
Too small a price, okay.
Don Francisco.
We have in the studio this morning Shaun Keoli, and we're actually talking, rather than talking, we're letting the music talk for us this morning and tell you about himself and what the music means to Shaun himself. So Shaun, welcome back to What's on Your Plate. Now, before we went into the break, into the song, we were finding out a little bit about you and a little bit about your background. So share a little bit more about what's going on with you.
Yeah, so as I said, I was born in South Africa, but I moved over to the UK, and I was Christian in South Africa, but as I came over here, I just lost track of who God was. And songs like the one we've just listened to, that really stirs me up and really brings me back to understanding, just how precious Christ is. And I looked at my children, and my children, didn't know who Christ was, and I thought, wow, I've really got to, introduce them to this Jesus that is just so amazing. And so we wound up at church in King's. And it was just amazing. I just felt like I'd walked back into a living room, and I just felt like, God embracing me and, welcoming me back home. But unfortunately, not long after that, I wound up by getting pneumonia.
So that's a really pivotal point in your life, isn't it?
Yeah. My pneumonia is something I would never take back. It was just like one of those things that God did so much work through me and changed me so much. You know, sometimes people talk about changing gear. Well, God changes the chassis, the engine, and everything else.
Yeah.
You know, it was a complete shift.
And that actually leads me on to my next song. And the reason that we're actually, as I say, we're going to be playing Shaun's music, choice of music, and so we've got a lot to get through. So the next choice of music is...
it's 10th Avenue North.
It's 10th Avenue North. Now, why did you choose that?
So this particular song, during my pneumonia, so I had heart complications, I had liver failure, I had all sorts of things. I was on all sorts of medication, and I felt incredibly fragile. And I was crying out to God, you know, I just want to live to tell my children about Christ. You know, that was the big thing. It was just my family. I need to tell them about Christ. And this song, you know, I listened to this song once when I was out walking, trying not to die, as it were. And this was in, like, I can only call it, you know, Technicolor 3D in my head, and it was just God speaking directly to where I was at the time.
Wonderful. So let's hear it now.
Don't turn away. Why are you looking for love? Why are you still searching as if I'm not enough? To where will you go, child? Tell me, where will you run? Where will you run? 'Cause I'll be by your side wherever you fall in the dead of night. Whenever you call, and please don't fight. These hands that are holding you, and my hands are holding you. Look at these hands side, they swallow the grave. On that night when I drank the world's sin, so I could carry you in and give you life. I wanna give you life, and I'll be by your side wherever you fall in the dead of night. Whenever you call, and please don't fight. These hands that are holding you, and my hands are holding you here at my side. Wherever you fall in the dead of night. Whenever you call, and please don't fight. These hands that are holding you, and my hands are holding you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Annette with What's on Your Plate. And
you're calling out for me, but I'm hiding in the bushes. There's no way you'd want me, not after what I've done. So why do you choose me? And there's so many better. I have nothing to offer. I'm a spiritual leper. You said your strength, it is perfect in my weakness. You said your love, it is casting out my fear. You said your strength, it is perfect in my weakness. You said your love, it is casting out my fear.
Now this is what the Lord says. He created you, people of Jacob. He formed you, people of Israel. He says, don't be afraid, because I have saved you. I have called you by my name, and you are mine.
Child, do not fear. I am here for you. Oh, child, do not fear. I am here for you. You say, child, do not fear. I am here for you. Oh, child, do not fear. I am here for you.
good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Annette with What's on Your Plate, and I do hope that you've enjoyed the music so far this morning. I have in the studio here Shaun Chioli, and Shaun has been talking about his life, and he also, just before we went to the songs that we've just heard, and I'm going to ask him about why he chose those last two songs. He was saying that he actually was came to a point in his life where he was unwell and he had pneumonia. So these are life-threatening sort of situations, and he has lots of other different things going on at the time. So Shaun, good morning. Tell us a little bit about that time of your life, what was going on.
Yeah, so I'd basically just come back to knowing who Christ was. And I'm a fit and healthy male, but apparently that's the perfect recipe for pneumonia. My age group, I was like the book standard, but I wound up with all these heart complications and liver failure and all sorts of things, and so I wound up in hospital in intensive care. My heart rate was all over the shop. I had atrial flutter, all sorts of things going on, and I felt very, very close to, not being on this planet anymore. Death was like right there at the door. And one night, I said goodnight to my kids, and as loud as you like in the back of my head was this voice that just said, "And there is no good morning to that." It was this was the last night. And in that moment, I just cried out to God and I said, "God, I just can't." And I had this vision of sort of being at the Grand Canyon, as it were, and being pushed forward towards it, And when you get over the edge of that cliff, you know, that's it, you know, and that cliff was coming so fast towards me. And as I cried out to God, it just stopped, you know, but I still feel like, you know, my toes are sitting there over the cliff edge, you know, effectively dangling in eternity. And really that is where I live my life from right now. You know, still got the toes there, still dangling out. And so, yeah, these songs, you know, they really echoed where I was at the time. You know, you do have not a fear of dying, but just a fear of leaving your loved ones, you know, because I knew Christ was there. And that was part of the vision. It was just I knew Christ was waiting for me.
Right.
But I wanted to be able to be there for my children.
That's very powerful, and thank you for sharing that with us. The thing is, the next song that we're going into is called The Victors. Now, why did you choose that?
Yeah, so since that point, God has really used everything that I learned in that point, the understanding of what really is important in this life, and He's really turned that over so I can start speaking a lot of truth into people's lives. Mm-hmm. And having been at that point of, you know, of death, you actually understand what is important. You understand what is really real, and we can get worked about the smallest of things. I used to be a complete worrywart. Not anymore. You know, these things change, and so I've been able to speak truth into people's lives, and God has been using me, you know, I think in incredible ways, far beyond anything that I could ever have imagined. But it all comes back to this point where God changed so much in my life.
Indeed. So let us hear that now.
Over
was finished. You were buried in the ground, but the grave could not contain you, for you wear the victor's
Good morning. This is Annette with What's on Your Plate, and welcome back. Did you enjoy that? I had a ball. I really enjoyed The Victors. That's a choice of Shaun music this morning that we've been listening to. So, welcome back. I have in the studio, live in the studio here, I will hasten to add, in the studio here, Shaun. Now, he's been telling us about his life and his past, where he comes from in South Africa, and he was telling us about his health, which he had a very serious sort of health situation. When it's life and death. He had pneumonia. But today we are actually using Shaun Curley's choice of music and letting the music tell his story, tell his life, and tell him what he's been. So, Shaun, can I come back to you now? Tell us, after The Victor, which is a fabulous song, The Victor, what was your position at the time? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think God was growing me in strength to strength. I was listening to a lot more word, and faith comes through hearing the word. And God was really growing me strong. Before that, I wasn't incredibly strong, not by a long shot. But now, God was just growing that. And I would say He was using me in ways that I never imagined. And one of those ways was one of my friends, one of my colleagues. They had just become a Muslim. They were Christian at one point, but they, not non-practicing, and they'd been taken in under the understanding that Islam was, the final faith. And so I just felt God just challenge me and say, well, what are you going to do about that? So I wound up by speaking to my friend, and God was just right there in that conversation. It just continued so long, and and after the first day of speaking, she turned around and said, I'm not really sure I can call myself a Muslim anymore. I don't want that. I want this Christ you're talking about.
Yes, so through yourself and talking and having that conversation, your friend actually came to realize that that wasn't really where they were supposed to be. And so, because it's very difficult, you know, if you have beliefs in one area and you're talking to somebody else who have different beliefs and different ways, tell us a little bit more, because it sounds really quite straightforward. You know, I'm just talking to somebody, but it's not. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
Share with us how you feel that has changed.
So there was a pivotal moment in our conversation.
Right.
She had come to speak to a man of faith because she knew I was a Christian.
Yes.
She said, I've got to tell you about Islam. And I was like, that's fine, but I'm not here, you know, speaking about, you know, beliefs and religion. I'm here speaking about a relationship.
Yeah.
At that point, she sat up. I was like, hang on a second. Well, why am I here? You know, why are we talking about this if we're not talking about comparing religions? And I said, because I'm not comparing religion, I'm comparing a relationship. You know, and that was something that was completely alien to her, was this, that you can actually have this personal and intimate relationship with God. You know, and telling her about where I'd come from, the experiences that I had, the walk that I'd had with God through my pneumonia. You know, all of that just really built in the understanding that we can walk side by side with God. You know, He holds us in His hands. That's not somebody who's distant.
Yeah.
You know, and she was just so excited by this and really wanted to, you know, grab Christ with both her arms. And in fact, she did.
Yeah, that's absolutely marvellous, because obviously when you're going through this situation, you're seeing changes because there's a change in yourself.
Yes.
Because you have that relationship, you have that Christ is in you, there's a change in yourself, and therefore other people see that in you.
Yes.
And so with that transitional relationship which has changed within yourself, how do you feel that that's playing out with you at the moment in your life?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things that helps me understand this relationship that I have with God is understanding our created purpose. And God, Genesis 1, you don't have to go very far, God creates us in His image. You know, 1 John 4 talks about how God is love.
Right.
We are created in His image. We are there to reflect God's glory to the world. We're there to reflect God's known character, which is love. You know, and if we can't, you know, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to reach out in love. We're supposed to reach out to the places that are dark. You know, and sometimes God puts us in dark places. Why? So we can be light.
Right.
You know, He puts us in tasteless situations. Why? So we can be salt.
Yeah.
You know, we can add God to it. We can, you know, help bring the broken back to God. You know, we can help people in whatever their circumstances are, understand that there's a God who loves them unconditionally.
Right.
You know, no matter how far they've walked away, they can come back, and that's this amazing news that we have in us, and that's what God does for us.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what He's done for me. He's totally changed that understanding that this is not just about going to church on a Sunday. You know, this is about having a relationship with Him 24/7, and we get to, you know, corporately express that on a Sunday, but up until that point, everything else is just like, hey, God, it's you and me. We're walking, you know, we're here in the studio, you know, all three of us, God, you and me. That's what it's about.
Yeah. And it's walking into, as you say, walking from that darkness into light.
Yes.
And so, how does this actually, from moving and talking, how do you see yourself, what's your purpose now, your direction in terms of your faith?
My direction is quite simply to be Christ to as many people as I can. You know, some people will never look at the Bible. They will never go to a church service. But if I can walk in love and show them God's love, not just, you know, worldly love, but God's love, which is just, you know, even though you hate me, I'm going to love you back.
Yeah.
You know, that's really where I want to be. So, yeah, I think it's about touching people's lives, speaking truth into lives. We can do that quite simply in the office. You know, some people may have all sorts of issues, but actually we can just speak God's truth into that. We can just say, hey, look, I know you're struggling in an area. Let's just go pray about that.
Right.
You know?
We've got lots of music to cover, so we're going to go into our next one, and our next song is
Great are you, Lord.
Great are you, Lord. Now, why did you choose that?
So this particular song references back to this, my friend who had become a Muslim. And she got baptized, and this was one of the songs that were playing at the time, you know, and it just encompasses that whole thing of how great God is, you know, how much he loves us, how he takes the broken and restores them, and that's exactly all the words of this, you know, you are light in the darkness, you know, it's just phenomenal.
Let's hear that playing now.
Yeah.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will say, great are
Good morning, good morning. This is Annette with What's on Your Plate. I hope you have been enjoying the show and welcome back. I have live in the studio with me, Shaun and we've been enjoying his choice of music and actually finding out about him as well. And we actually got to a point now where he is a Christian and he's out there in the world. And Shaun, how does that play out for you now in terms of your life? What is it about what you are doing which is different to before?
Yeah, so I think one of the ways that God has changed me is I had a friend who went out to Malawi and she wrote back about all the malaria she was seeing. She was a doctor, and so, and I just felt when I was reading that, I just felt God really, poke me in the side and say, well, what are you going to do about those people who are dying who do not know me? That was a real challenge, because it was about not just a humanitarian thing, but there was a gospel element there. It was like those who are dying who do not know me. And so my reaction was, well, we're going to Gambia, where there's a lot of malaria, very deadly malaria in Gambia. And so we wound up by taking some nets out just because we were going on holiday. But that really developed into a much bigger thing.
Right, before you go, so you were actually planning a holiday to go to the Gambia. How did this come about?
We were literally just going on holiday. There was no planning in it. Well, I say there was no planning. I think God had a lot of planning in that. Yeah. So yeah, that was something that we were already doing, and this just happened at the back of it. And we thought, well, we're going anyway. Why don't we just take some nets with us?
So how many nets did you take?
So we took 30 nets with us. And the nets we took were the big sort of king size nets.
Not a net, but not a net, but nets. Yeah,
exactly.
Nets.
So the nets were the big king size bed nets, big box shaped ones, which are incredibly effective. And so when we were out there, we actually connected up with World Evangelism for Christ, WEC, and they showed us around, and we wound up by just creating this incredible bond with them while we were out there, long before anything beyond that had developed.
Right. So you went, I'm trying to draw the picture, because you went on holiday, and you took about 30 or so nets with you, which was fine, which was very, very, very good. But how did you make that connection? I mean, did you specifically know somebody, or? No,
I spoke to somebody in the church, and their father had worked originally in Gambia with WEC, and so they said, well, why don't you just phone them, or email them, contact them, see what we can do.
Yeah.
And so it was one of these open fire emails. Hey, we're coming out. Can we connect up?
Wonderful.
And we did.
Wonderful. And what happened after that?
So we came back from Gambia having been totally transformed with how this was, what this would look like, and how much they depended on the nets. And we wound up by getting the most sensible piece of advice ever. And it was through my church elder, and he said, if God is in this, you're going to need to form something official. You can't just piggyback onto anybody else. This is something you have to do. So we wound up by setting up a charity, which we now call Life Seekers International.
Okay.
And so what we do is we get funding over here in the UK, and we get the net. We buy the nets, and they ship directly through to the Gambia. And then we've got the contact out there is effectively the guy who leads the Evangelical Alliance of Churches. And he's got all his missionaries and his pastors and whatnot. And so they take the nets now, and they actually go out on field missions, spreading the gospel, taking the nets. And the nets act as a key to get into various compounds that would never have accepted them before.
Wonderful.
And so they tell them about a blood that is more precious than their own. And by the way, we care about your blood as well, and we cover them with nets.
Oh, lovely. That is a beautiful, beautiful way to get out there and to help and support people who need the help.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, is there anything which is going on with the charity now which you would like to share with people who might be listening? Is there anything which is going on?
Yeah.
I call this part "What's on your plate." What's on your plate in terms of the charity?
So my particular emphasis right now is looking for more people to partner with in areas that are affected by malaria.
Right.
So Gambia is we've got in a blueprint. It's working. But now we've got excess supply of nets because there's only so much that they can do. So we're now looking for new places, right through the malaria belt of Africa, where we're wanting to connect up with.
Okay, yeah. Any places specific? I mean, this is a worldwide, HeartSongLive goes out through the world. So anything you say here goes out there. So is anyone, anything specific in that respect?
Typically, we look for a place where we can ship them the nets to. So Central Africa, landlocked countries are a lot more difficult logistically. We still trust that God will give us provision and understanding, but at the moment we're looking more for the land, for the coastal areas.
Right.
And then we'll look to partner with people there and have that conversation there. So we don't just sort of drop them off at a port and expect them to happen. We do partner up with people and they get involved. They become part of our DNA. We become part of theirs. We share.
So are you looking for any NGOs or anything along those lines? Or because there's lots of people out there, who may feel that they might be able to, or maybe somebody in logistics. You might be looking for somebody in logistics here who can actually help you with the distribution and out there. Is that the sort of thing that you're looking for?
Yeah, typically even churches. That's probably the primary, because this is a mission about Christ backed onto a humanitarian goal.
Yeah.
So it's not just a case of dropping a bunch of nets in the middle of a town somewhere. This is about spreading the gospel. And that's the one thing that I have when when we're fundraising. We're always saying, hey, do you know what? If you can spare £2.20, which is what a net costs, that £2.20 spreads the gospel to a family.
Yes.
Yes. That's the way we look at it. We don't look at it necessarily in the net's perspective. We look at it more eternally. How do we get the gospel out there to these people?
Yeah.
And £2.50 is a net which covers, a family.
I love this. I'm really into planting the seeds, and to me, the nets are the seeds. Let's get the get them out there, get the seeds out there. Going through the nets.
Yes,
that's lovely. So we're going to actually go on to our next song because we're actually beginning to run out of time. We can just keep chatting, and our next song is
Come Away.
Come Away. Now, why did you choose that one?
So this song was while I was actually out in the Gambia with WEC. They sang this song, and it was just like God speaking it directly into my heart. God's got a plan for your life. It's never too late. Come away with him. It's going to be wild. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be beyond your own understanding. But just get on the ride and go for it. And
Okay,
that's what this song says.
Let's hear it now. morning, good morning. This is Annette with What's on Your Plate. And I'm at the controls this morning, so I'm having a ball. I'm having a fun time. We are actually been here this morning with Shaun, and we've been having a lovely time listening to his choice of music, and we're just about to run out of time. So I'm going to actually hand over to Shaun, and he is going to actually give us a little bit of prayers.
Yeah, Lord.
So,
Lord, we just thank you for your love, God. You've broken into each of our lives, God, and there's so many more lives that you want to break into. And Lord, we just pray that you use each one of us to be salt and light and love to the people around us, especially in the world at the moment, in all the troubles that we're seeing, God. That you're the only sort of love that, God, that we can express, because you fill us, that we can then pour that out on those around us. So Lord, we just pray for that this morning, that you fill us with your love more than ever before.
Thank you very much for that lovely blessing, that lovely prayer. That will keep me going all day, regardless of what.
Wide awake while the world is sound asleep, and too afraid of what might show up while you're dreaming. Nobody sees you. Nobody will believe you. And every day you try to pick up all the pieces, all the memories, they somehow never leave you. Nobody sees you. Nobody will believe you. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. 'Cause there's a kind of love that God only knows. There's a kind of love. There's a kind of love.
You keep cover over every single secret. So afraid if someone saw them they would leave. But somebody sees you. Somebody will never leave you.
God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows how it's killing you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. But God only knows the real you. 'Cause there's a kind of love that God only knows. There's a kind of love. There's a kind of love. God only knows. There's a kind of love. There's a kind of love.
For the lonely, for the ashamed, the misunderstood and the ones to blame. What if we could start over? We could start over. We could start over.
Oh, for the lonely, for the ashamed, the misunderstood and the ones to blame. What if we could start over? We could start over. We could start over. 'Cause there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what to say about you. But God only knows the real you. 'Cause there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what to say about you. But God only knows the real you. 'Cause there's a kind of love that God only knows. There's a kind of love. There's a kind of love. God only knows. There's a kind of love. There's a kind of love.
God only knows where to find you. God only knows how to break through. God only knows the real you.
There's a kind of love that God